Daren Pippio is an industrial organizational psychologist who also happens to be the Senior Vice President of Advisory Strategy and Development at Raymond James. Listen to how Daren made the transition from organizational development to investment consulting, how she built her credibility over time, the importance of having a value proposition for yourself, and how to strategically build an internal group of advocates. We also talk about the importance of speaking to your children and your parents about money. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Daren, we're so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wanted to start out by talking a little bit about your current role. Your official title is Senior Vice President, Advisor Strategy and Development. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about what that means, how you arrived at this role from both personal and professional perspectives.
Sure. In my role, it is a mouthful, but in my role at Raymond James, I work directly with our financial advisors to help them really establish their practices with respect to how they manage client assets. So what that means is, do they have the processes in place to manage their clients' assets in the appropriate investment vehicles? How are they set up to monitor those investments, ensure that they are meeting their clients' goals? And so we consult with our advisors on that and provide them, best practices, considerations. All advisors are unique in some way, so we want to be sensitive to their structure and the resources that they have. How I got here is pretty circuitous. It's I am an industrial organizational psychologist, and actually finished my doctorate while I was interning here at Raymond James in the Human Resources Department. And that is a very different path to get where I am today. But as an industrial psychologist, we are taught to analyze jobs in the sense of, how can I get this particular person in this job to do better, to perform better, to be more effective. I worked in HR for about 6 years and was asked to build a training program for our financial advisors within our asset management department. So I joined, the asset management department with the purposes of training our financial advisors on investment management. Which meant that I probably should learn a little bit about investment management myself. I had never taken an economics, finance, or accounting class on my way to getting a doctorate in psychology. So I really had to spend a lot of time listening to the advisors and building some credibility with them, getting to learn their roles, which is what, we do. But really being that consultant and being vulnerable to saying, I don't know. And I think that has really helped build my position and continue to learn about what the opportunities are to service advisors better. Does that help?
That does help, because it's certainly a leap, I believe, to go from HR to investment consulting. And I know that you have much knowledge here and specific designations, the SEMA, et cetera. Some of our listeners might not know exactly what that means, but it is a very difficult certification or designation to achieve, in my opinion. Can you tell me a little bit about who potential mentors or teachers were in those early days when you first started the job, day one? How did you learn what you needed to learn?
I've had a lot of different mentors, whether they know it or not. I'm pretty open to feedback, and I think that's one of the strengths that I have, is that I know what I don't know. I'm open to criticism, some people call it, or feedback, or just information, and I'm constantly seeking it out. One of the mentors is, I would say, Tom James. Tom James' father, Bob James, started Raymond James. I've known Tom James, outside of work, and certainly since I joined Raymond James in 1998. Just 2 weeks ago, right before the Super Bowl, I called him up and I said, let's have lunch. And I went and I picked his brains and said, what should I do about this? Or how should the advisors consider this? And he's always been so approachable and available and willing to just sit down and think through problems with me. So from that, and he taught me a lot about the industry and about how to think about advisors, and continues to do so. Other mentors have provided me with insights into just, how to make even personal, situations. My first mentor within asset management, who I'm still very close friends with, he's since retired. He loved investing, and I literally had the 401k plan of a 75-year-old woman when I joined asset management, and I was 34 years old. I was so conservative because I was a single mother with two young children who I continued to raise for 15 years as a single mother. And so nothing could be at risk in my financial world, right? And so as we think about our money lessons, I was able to walk into a role in my professional life that gave me access to people who understood this and understood financial planning. And I was really lucky because I got some free, insights. And just to take those chances, teaching me like it's okay to contact, an attorney and say, I have this outstanding bill that's this much. How about if I offer you this much? And we'll call it, a day. And I never even knew that would be an option. And so with the guidance and the support of, my boss at the time, I made the call to my divorce attorney and I said, I have this huge outstanding bill. Can I pay it off for 55, 60% of the balance right now rather than being on a monthly payment plan? Right. And my boss told me if they said no, what do you have to lose? You go back to your monthly payment plan. Right. So I was able to do that. And I think that those kind of mentors, like really interested in, your personal life as well as your professional career. I've just had that good fortune of people taking a chance on me. And I don't think people get those chances until they show their willingness, right? And I had a lot of interest and enthusiasm and curiosity, even though this wasn't my background. And I've been told, I'm saving you from yourself, Daren. And I say, I can do that. I want to do that. Can I do that? And they'd say, I'm going to save you from yourself right now. Whereas some people would feel like that was a rejection. I'm like, oh, okay. Like they know what's best, So I think that mentors are really important if you're willing to listen to the hard feedback and replies as well as the good stuff, right?
Yes, those hard truths are definitely sometimes difficult to hear. I understand. Going back a little bit to when you first started in this role, the role you're currently in, or when you first moved to asset management, how difficult was it to gain credibility with the advisors? Because here you were a very talented IO psychologist, very well versed in HR, obviously in organizational development, but you were brand new to this role. So, how did that all shake out?
Oh, I think that having more letters behind my name than in front of my name definitely helped, right? So when you have a PhD behind your name, people don't know what it's for, but they assume you actually have some capability of learning tough material. So you have sort of this instant credibility. So I definitely had to lean on that in the investment world. But I did seek out other industry relevant designations, such as the Certified Investment Management Analyst designation that you referenced earlier, and just trying to speak the language that they spoke, understand when I was gathering information, what was noise and what was important. That was huge, and involving those individuals, involving those advisors, and helping guide me. I would. Perhaps some people call it stroking their ego. So really seeking out the top, most visible, most vocal financial advisors at Raymond James to essentially validate my work, right? Getting their buy-in, getting their input. And really that's been the focus of my role today, is continually building on my own career and my own job based on what the best and the brightest advisors are telling me they need. right? So if they need access to this, that, or the other, they need somebody to look into their practices or their portfolios, then I need to be able to offer it well, promote it to other advisors, right? That we are doing this, we're working with the best and the best, and then show that that's a real formal part of my job now, right? So I think that that is really just getting your advocates and getting your circle of people and your supporters around you to help build you up, as you go along. So that I think that was my credibility builders.
So building that strong network of internal advocates was very strategic
Key.
and important and key to your success in this role.
As opposed to building credibility with people that worked at the corporate offices, that would not have helped really advance my work, because the advisors who are the receivers or my clients, they needed to buy into it, right? So that sort of network was important.
I also kind of on a similar topic. So it sounds like you've done really a great job here building this internal network, but this is a typically very male dominated industry, and that is changing slowly. But could you talk a little bit about any challenges or obstacles you have faced and how you overcame them that perhaps women listening, whether they're in a corporate role or a different type of role, would learn from?
I think it's interesting. I don't see the financial advisors as that being an issue. They're lucky. I mean, they're happy and grateful to receive support regardless of who's providing it. And I'm sure you've experienced similar things. Is that if you're giving good service and you are a resource that they know your name from the advisors, financial advisors, they're happy to contact you. What I would say is that in a male-dominated world or industry such as ours, and probably in a legal, profession, the internal, corporate environment is where it presents its challenges. Whether that's you're the only female around a table, whether you're the youngest person and a female around the table,
Which is the worst, I think.
yeah, and the youngest plus plus a female plus the tenure is you just you have these kind of layers, and you have to lean in. And I mean, I hate to use something as cliche as that, but you have to show up, right? They are looking to you to not bring, any organization is looking for an individual who can bring attention to a need as well as the solution, right? So if you are able to show, hey, I'm going to take care of this, I know it's a solution, I think that's really helpful for many young women, not to be viewed as an admin. You're not there to take notes. You're not there to, corral the troops and schedule the meeting. You're there to provide an opinion. You're there to present a solution. You're there to present facts. And that's how you talk and handle yourself, I think, in a corporate environment. Certainly, you're going to run into situations where, there's a long pipeline of candidates for jobs who are male because they've been here, right? And so sometimes you have to find a place for yourself where it doesn't currently exist. So building your own corporate ladder and building your own box on the organizational chart is appropriate. I've been fortunate that I'm the only person that does what I do in all the different roles mainly because I've created them, right? And then you show them the need. So it takes time and it takes patience and it takes communication, and it can be worth it, right? So I think you have to basically, in a male dominated organization, is be comfortable having this conversation, be comfortable standing up for what you believe in, be confident in it, and don't necessarily consider yourself to be sort of just the admin on the block, right? So that can take time.
And I love the notion of creating a box for yourself on the org chart. Something else I wanted to ask you about was how much self promotion is involved in this. And you had mentioned, you have mentors. Tom James is a mentor, I know, has been for a very long time, and you can call him and have lunch with him and get him his advice. But how does kind of mentorship and self marketing and self promotion work into this ability for others to recognize you as a high potential person in an organization?
That's very challenging for women. I mean, self-promotion in and of itself is a very tricky balance. It's not viewed as self-promotion. It's viewed as total bragging, and it's just it's an industry-wide issue. It's a corporate-wide issue. It's a female-wide issue. It's just male versus female kind of gender differences, right? It's kind of like she's not assertive, she's aggressive. She's not self-promoting, she's bragging. And that's a very difficult thing. I view myself as not being very good at that, because I don't say, okay, I'm going to network X number of hours per week. I'm not going to set up meetings just to be in front of people. But I do think that even though I don't do that, I do think that that is a very effective method to getting yourself visible, making yourself available, building those relationships, and really committing to, every Tuesdays and Thursdays at some point in my day, I'm going to have a meeting on my calendar where I'm just getting to know somebody and sharing ideas. Very, very effective. And it keeps you in the forefront of a lot of those decision makers. Self-promotion, again, I think women, we believe that if we just do a good job and we put our heads down, that somebody's going to notice magically and offer us this great opportunity, right? And it doesn't happen that way. And I think that that's very eye-opening. At the end of the day, you're like, gosh, I didn't get that consideration, but I've been working so hard. Well, does anybody know you're working so hard, right? So while the financial advisors, they're the voice of the firm, our financial advisors will tell people at the home office, Daren and her team are very helpful for us, right? So I, allow that rather than me saying it. But I think that you still have to do that self-promotion and meet with people and let them know what you're doing, educate people on what you are actually accomplishing.
So it's twofold. It's building that strategic network of advocates that will mention that you're doing a great job, and then also taking a concerted effort to making sure people know what you're doing.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to change the subject a little bit and ask you if you would be willing to share any financial tips or guidance to individuals that are watching or listening today, whether that's come from your personal upbringing or from your professional background and career development.
Well, since I had the 401k of a 75-year-old woman when I was 34, I will say that get a professional, hire a professional, because I'm in investment management and that's my day job. And I work with financial advisors managing clients' assets. In my specific area, we have $283 billion of client assets. That's, about 20%, 25% of the firm's total client asset base. But I still have my own CPA and I still have a financial advisor. My husband also works in investment management. We both have our license. We are both registered. We both can, if we want, facilitate our own investment transactions, but we hire a professional to look after all of those financial planning things. And that's, I would think that would be the biggest thing. Don't try and set out on your own and figure it out, because it's extremely complex. And you just, it's not something you want to take a chance with and play around with. That was my big advice.
I appreciate that advice, and I think it makes a lot of sense, especially to those of us who have worked in this industry and maybe tried to do it on our own. Mm-hmm. Thinking back to your own background, being a single mom with young children and working very hard, as I've known you for a while and I know what a hard worker you are, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know today?
Well, I think that I regret not being more present. I didn't have anybody paying my electric bill with me. So I was I worked a lot, and you definitely know that firsthand. I remember I think my daughter's first words were, "No, mom, not the computer again." So she really recognized that I might be home and I might be feeding them, but I'm back on my computer. And uh, I would say that being present at their time, you spend much less time with your children and arguably have a greater impact from a societal perspective with your children than you do at your job, right? You spend less time with your children than you do at your job, but you have such an opportunity for greater impact. So I would say be present with those kids. You're not going to get those days back, and you don't want to second guess yourself on what if I would have, or could have, or should have, or anything like that. So that's probably my biggest advice I would give to my younger self.
I understand. I have another question around children since you were mentioning children. How do you feel about how we currently teach our children about finances and financial advice and those types of topics? And are we doing a good job, the collective we being, maybe perhaps women of our age that have older children now, but what could be different or stay the same there?
It's interesting. Years ago, when I first started in asset management at Raymond James, there was a speaker at a women's conference, the Raymond James Women's Symposium, and she spoke about the taboo of money. And I don't know if you remember, Tess, but years ago, it was an education for our financial advisors to understand that it's not taboo to talk about money with your children. But those are the generations that we grew up in, right? Is that I never knew how much money my father ever made when I was in graduate school. I never knew. And so I think we are doing a better job at involving our children in those conversations, as younger children, the 8-year-olds, the 9-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, and so on. There's junior achievement programs that come into, the classrooms to talk about it. I think it is more acceptable to get them to understand money, and saving. And you see a lot of financial advisors are really offering those services for those who don't know how to have those conversations. It's interesting because I think when the children are 50 and 60 years old, it's harder for them to have those conversations with their parents about money. And this is critical because we're talking about estate planning, right? So at younger generations, it's becoming more comfortable. You're teaching your children how to save, how to spend, how to budget, how to plan. But when the really big questions happen about estate planning and legacy, I think it's a little bit different because of those generational, you know, stereotypes of what it is to talk about money. It's difficult for me to talk to my parents about it. Right. So, but I
I
can talk to
agree.
you
So
about
I'm
my
in the
kids.
same boat.
Right. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I think that we're doing a good job with the little. I think we're still working on the succession or the transfer of money generationally. Yeah.
Maybe I have two more questions. Is there any career tips that you haven't already covered that you would like to share with any women that might be listening today, whether that's someone young, someone trying to make a change in their career, maybe someone that's going to maybe be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think, it really goes back to finding a need, right? What do people need to do something, right? Be successful. And I think that's the entrepreneurial, spirit of, one could argue, just customer service, listening, understanding the needs of the client, and that client can be defined as whatever you want. It could be your management team, it could be our financial advisors, and it could be their end clients, and just really focusing on what am I missing? What could do better? Even if it's just efficiencies, right? They're really struggling with this. How can I remove those obstacles? That's really key. And I think, it takes time to learn those things. But career tips, I would say, make sure you can speak to what you do, because you want others to say, oh, she's very good at that. Well, if they can't articulate what you do, then that's very hard for somebody to get advocates, right? To make themselves visible and available. So be sure that you can communicate what you do and articulate it so that others can as well, right? And it's the same thing in sales. If you can sell somebody, you want to explain that to a client well enough that they can tell their friends. Tess was very helpful for me in planning my financial, situation. This is how she did it. They tell a friend, it's easier for those people to advocate and sell for you. So just make sure that you understand what you do and are confident and clear on the value that you can offer.